Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. So today we will be starting with the next lecture on the topic sampling designs. I am Dr. Harmeet Kaur Kang from Chitkara University, Punjab. Let us see the learning outcomes of this lecture. At the end of the lecture, you will be able to understand the basic concepts which are used in sampling and understand the different types of the sampling technique, where we will be talking about non-probability and probability sampling techniques. So through that you will be able to understand the difference between the probability and non-probability sampling techniques and the strengths and weakness of each of these techniques. Before going into the sampling techniques, we should be knowing about the basic concepts which are used particularly when we are thinking of which sampling technique has to be used. The first and foremost concept which you should be clear is the population. So what is the population? A population is the entire aggregation of cases in which a researcher is interested. So depending upon your research topic, the whole population, the aggregate of the subjects or cases will be your population. For example, if you are doing a research study on nursing students, then your population will be the nursing students studying in all over India. So that will be your population. So because nursing students studying in all over India is the entire aggregation. So that is the population for your study. Another important concept is accessible population. So what is accessible population? It is the aggregate of cases that conform to the designated criteria and that are accessible as a pool of subjects for a study. So accessible means one thing is that the subjects which will be accessible to you, and second thing is that whatever criteria, eligibility criteria you have decided for your study, they should be conforming to those particular criterias. So two things you need to remember when you will be understanding the concept of accessible population is that one is that the subjects should be accessible to you. Second should be that they should be as per your eligibility criteria which you have set for your research study. Third one is target population. Now what is a target population? It is the aggregate of cases about which the researcher would like to make generalizations. Generalization means whatever findings you will be getting from your research study, on whom you want to apply those findings. So always target population is the aggregate of cases on which you will be making your generalizations. For example, I talked to you regarding nursing students. So if your subjects are nursing students, so then your target population might be the nursing students. Maybe you can think of the nursing students from all the classes, or you want your target population to be the final year nursing students studying in India. Another important concept is eligibility criteria. So whenever you are conducting a research study, whether you are conducting an experimental research study or a non-experimental research study, you need to decide that which all characteristics should be possessed by the subjects whom you will be including in your research study. So eligibility criteria should always be set before you decide your sampling technique. So researchers should be specific about the criteria that defines that who is included in the population. So in the population, which type of the characteristics those subjects should be having. The criteria that specify the population characteristics are referred to as eligibility criteria or inclusion criteria. So whatever criteria you decide that these people with these characteristics will be included in your study, that is known as the inclusion criteria. Sometimes a population is defined in terms of the characteristics that people must not possess. So we are sometimes concerned about that our population should not be including the people who will be having these conditions. So these conditions might be based upon uh, different types of points. Like for example, you may think about the costs. Sometimes, for example, you include in your eligibility criteria that you will be including the subjects who do not know or who do not communicate in Punjabi, Hindi or English, because you need to take care that if you will be including the people who are who know the any other language which you cannot interpret, then you have to consider the cost of the translators. If you have the funding to bear the cost of the translator, then you can include. If you do not have the funding available or money available to pay to the translators, then you can include in your exclusion criteria that these people will be excluded who are not knowing a particular language. Second thing is practical concerns. Practical concerns, sometimes your research study is in a such a way that you need the subjects possessing certain characteristics, or you need to exclude certain subjects with the specific types of the characteristics. For example, if you are conducting a study, you cannot include the people who are mentally unstable, or the persons with a specific condition who are in coma, because they won't be able to provide you any information. So you may decide about the eligibility criteria or exclusion criteria based upon your needs of the research study or objectives of the research study. Fourth one is people's ability to participate in study. You need to see whether people will be able to participate in your study or not. They should be willing, they should be volunteering to participate. And sometimes if your study is a longitudinal type of the study, whether the subjects will be the same sample, if you are continuing for the long term, whether they will be staying there only or they will be moving out. So it will be depending upon the people's ability also, whether they will be able to participate in your study or not. Last might be the design consideration. Sometimes depending upon your design, you may need to decide that what type of characteristics should be there. Particularly if we are talking about the experimental research design, we need to take care of certain extraneous variables, because these extraneous variables will be affecting your outcome. It will be affecting the validity of the study. So sometimes we decide beforehand that these people who will be having these particular extraneous variables will be excluded. For example, if you are providing any intervention in the hospital to some patients, and you want to find out the effectiveness of that intervention, then you may like to exclude the people who might be using any other type of the treatment, maybe some home remedies or some Ayurvedic treatment or homeopathic treatment, because you particularly want to see the effect of your intervention on the outcome. Otherwise, those particular home remedies or Ayurvedic or homeopathic medicines uh, may act as the extraneous variables, and which may result in decrease in the validity of your study. So sometimes the eligibility criteria might also be based upon your study design. Now coming to sampling. So what is sampling? Sampling is the process of selecting a portion of population to represent the entire population. If we try to study, if we try to think practically, it is not possible to conduct the study on whole population, because population might be very big, and for researcher it is not able, it is not easy to consider each and every person in the population for the research study. So when it is not feasible to conduct a study on entire population, then all the researchers usually they rely upon selecting the portion of population. When we select the portion of the population out of the entire population, that is known as sampling, and your sample is always representative of your entire population. So this is very important, that representation of the sample should be taken care, that it should be representative of your population. So sample can be defined as that it is a subset of the population elements. So in the population, if you see that these are the subjects which are conforming to your designated criteria, and out of those cases in the population, you will be selecting a portion that will be known as a sample. So that is why it is known as subset of the population elements. Now, what can be the element of a sample? Sample necessarily may not be consisting of human subjects. You may have the element of the sample as hospitals, you may have villages, you may have nursing schools or simple government schools or private schools. Those can also be the element of a sample. So what is the element? Element is the most basic unit about which information is collected. So what is the basic unit? Is it a human subject? Is it a hospital? Is it a a city, or is it a school? So that can be the basic unit about which you will be collecting the information in your research study. What is meant by representative sample? Representative sample means representative sample is one whose key characteristics closely approximate that of the population. So it means whatever sample we are selecting out of the population, its characteristics should be according to the population only. This is not that your sample which you are selecting, it is not having the characteristics same as the population, then it will not be representing the population. So whenever you are selecting a sample, you need to take care that your sample should be representing the population, means the characteristics of the sample subjects should be same as the characteristics in the population. But every time with the probability or non-probability, we cannot always say that sample can be fully representative, but always we try to take a bigger sample, or we try to select the subjects randomly in the sample, so that our sample can be more representative of the population. Next concept is strata. What is strata? Strata is a plural, and in singular we can use it as stratum. So a stratum is a mutually exclusive segment of a population established by one or more characteristics. So based upon the characteristics, for example, gender wise, male, female can be the two stratas. We can divide our population into that, and out of these stratas we can select the sample. Or we can take the strata as age groups, maybe the age group adolescents, adults, middle age or old age people. Like that we can make the strata, and then out of the stratas then we select the subjects. So each strata of the population should be considered, and the sampling should be done from all the stratas. Okay, then now next, what is the sampling bias? The sampling bias refers to the systematic over-representation or under-representation of some segment of population in terms of the characteristics relevant to the research question. So sometimes, depending upon our research question, we select the sample out of the population. And sometimes knowingly, or you can say intentionally or unintentionally, our sample may be over representing some segments, or sometimes under representing segment. For example, if we are selecting male and female and randomly we select, automatically sometimes number of males may go up and females may go down. So it means we are under representing the females in our sample, right? So sampling, so there then sampling bias may come. And sometimes sampling bias might be added by the researcher if the researcher is selecting the subjects by his own choice, or sometimes if in the starting we have randomly selected, and then when we started including them in our study, then we start doing that the people, for example, if I want to do a study on the satisfaction about the nursing care, then sometimes we may know that this particular patient did not behave properly with the nurses, so then I may not include that particular person in the sample. That may add to the sampling bias. So such type of the decisions should not be taken by the researcher. Okay, now you have understood the basic concepts. Now let us talk about the different types of the sampling designs. Whenever we talk about the sampling designs, we are having two types of the sampling design. One is non-probability sampling and another one is probability sampling. So let us discuss these sampling designs in depth. So first of all, we will talk about the non-probability sampling. So what is non-probability sampling? Non-probability sampling is less likely than probability sampling to produce accurate and representative samples. So it means, because in non-probability we do not select the subjects randomly, so we are not giving the chance to each and every subject to get selected in the sample. So because of that, non-probability sampling is not taken as a very good representation of a population. So that is why it is always said that it is less likely to produce the accurate and representative samples. But despite this fact, most research samples in the nursing and other disciplines are non-probability samples. So usually if you will see nursing or psychology or social sciences, mostly we go for the non-probability samplings because this is practically possible. It is feasible. Many times there are so many constraints to go for the probability sampling, and then we go for the non-probability sampling techniques only. So there are different types of the non-probability sampling. The first one is convenience sampling, then we have purposive sampling, then is quota sampling, and last one is snowball sampling. So we will be discussing about these sampling techniques of particularly non-probability sampling techniques in detail. So first of all, let us talk about the convenience sampling. So convenience sampling entails using the most conveniently available people as the study participant. So whichever people we can get conveniently, we include those particular subjects in our sample. So that is why it is known as convenience sampling. And convenience samples do not necessarily comprise individuals known to the researcher. So it does not mean that the researcher will be including only those people whom he knows. The researcher may include the subjects, maybe he may stand at the gate of the library, so every person who will be entering in the library, he may include those. Or a teacher may select all the students of a class in her sample because those are conveniently available to the teacher. Or in a village, whosoever is coming to the health dispensary we may include those subjects in the sample because those are conveniently available to the researcher. So stopping people at a street corner to conduct an interview is sampling by convenience, because at a street corner, whosoever will be passing by, you can take that person in your sample. So that is a convenient sampling. Sometimes researchers seeking people with certain characteristics place an advertisement in a newspaper, or put up signs in the clinic or supermarkets, or post messages in the chat room on the internet. So through this also, because conveniently whosoever will be volunteering to participate in your research study, they can be included into the sample. So these are the some ways of getting the subjects in your research sample when you are using the convenient sampling. These approaches are subject to bias. Now, always there are chances of biasness in this type of the approach. That is why this convenient sampling is considered as the weakest type of the sampling technique, because people select themselves as pedestrians on certain streets or as volunteers in response to the posted notices. The people who will be passing by through that street on that day will only be included in your study. What about the people who were at home or who did not pass through that particular road? So you will be missing out on many persons who could have been included in your sample. So that is why this type of a research sampling design is a biased type of a sampling design. Another variant of the convenience sampling is snowball sampling. Now, snowball sampling is also known as the network sampling or chain sampling, because here we do a networking. Through the one person, we try to get the another subject and to make a chain. So that is why this is known as network sampling or chain sampling, and it is a variant of a convenience sampling only, because here we select the samples who are conveniently available to us. Particularly with this approach, early sample members are asked to identify and refer other people who meet the eligibility criteria. Maybe this particular type of the sampling design is used for the subjects which are not easily available, which are difficult to get. For example, you may talk about the patients with the cystic fibrosis, or patients with the aortic regurgitation, or any person who might be sometimes HIV positive. So you may get one person and then you ask the person that if he or she knows about any other person who can be included in the research study and who meet the eligibility criteria, then you go and get the data from that particular person. So this method of sampling is often used when the research population is people with the specific traits who might otherwise be difficult to identify. So who might be difficult to identify, we may get that. For example, people who are afraid of hospitals. So you can ask one person and then that person can refer you to the another person whom he knows. So snowball sampling with a few eligibility study participants and then continue on the basis of referrals from those participants until the desired sample size has been obtained. So we will continue to go to the another subject who has been referred by the earlier subject till the time the desired sample size has been obtained. Now, what if we evaluate the convenience sampling design? The convenience sampling is the weakest form of the sampling, as I have already told you, because here you will be missing out on many persons who were not available on a particular day, or like on a street they have not passed, or who have not used the internet, so they may not get into your sample. So that is why this is a type of a weak type of sampling design, and it is also most commonly used sampling method in many disciplines, but still it is used in many disciplines because sometimes other types of the sampling designs may not be feasible to use. In heterogeneous population, there is no other sampling approach in which the risk of sampling bias is greater. So particularly heterogeneous population, where the characteristics of the subjects in the population is varying. So then if you are using the convenience sampling, then particularly few subjects may, few segment of the population may over represent and few may under represent, so that can add to sampling bias. So particularly in convenience sampling, sampling bias chances are greatest. The example of the convenience sampling is a prospectively examined long-term effects of pediatric intensive care unit experience on parents and on family adaptation. So the researchers used convenience sampling to recruit 3 groups of the parents. So they recruited 3 groups of the parents conveniently. So those with the hospitalized child in the pediatric intensive care unit, one group was that. Another one was those with the child in the general unit, and third one those with the non-hospitalized ill children. So these people were already available in these units, so that is why these parents were included in this study. So this is a type of a convenience sampling. Now coming to the another type of non-probability sampling design, that is quota sampling. Quota sample is one in which researcher identifies population strata and determine how many participants are needed from each stratum. So I have already talked to you about strata. So strata is that we divide the population into different segments. So those segments might be based upon specific characteristics. For example, we may identify the strata based upon age groups. We may identify the strata based upon educational qualifications, or stratas can be formed based upon gender. So you may identify the stratas and then from each strata you select the subjects. So your sample will be having the representation from each strata. This is known as the quota sample. So by using the information about population characteristics, researcher can ensure that diverse segments are represented in the sample, preferably in the proportion in which they occur in the population. So we try to see that what are the characteristics present in the population. For example, if we talk about the ethnicity or the religion based segments of the population, then we may see that what is the percentage of people of a specific religion in the population. Then it is better to include the same percentage of the subjects in your sample as they are in the population. So that is known as the proportionate type of the sampling. So it means proportionately as they are present in the population, in the same way you will be selecting them in the sample. So stratification should be based on one or more variables that would reflect important difference in the dependent variable under category. So these stratas can be based upon certain characteristics, and these stratas can help us to compare the outcome or dependent variable based upon the different stratas. So for example, if we want to study effect of some intervention or not effect of some intervention, or you can say that you want to study the attitude of certain groups based upon their strata can be gender wise, so male and female. So maybe you want to find out the attitude towards caring the HIV positive patients, and you want to find out that whether males are more having the better attitude or females are having the better attitude. So then you will get to know that what is the attitude based upon the different stratas or based upon the gender. Such variables as age, gender, ethnicity, educational attainment and medical diagnosis are often good stratifying variables. So stratifying variables can be considered based upon the characteristics of the population and also based upon your research question, because sometimes your research outcome variable might be affected by these particular characteristics. It will be better to consider them as strata so that you can find out the effect on the dependent variable based upon your these stratas or these characteristics. So quota sampling represents an important improvement over convenience sampling. So it is a better type of sampling design than the convenience sampling, because here the representation of each group is there and should be considered by quantitative researchers whose resource content or need the use of the probability sampling. So it will be helping in decreasing the weakness over the probability sampling, because in quota sampling you are trying to get the subjects from each strata. So here the over representation or under representation of different stratas can be decreased. One example of the quota sampling is that these authors, they did a study and they studied the mother's expectation for children's development, and the researchers used the quota sampling to ensure an equal number of urban and rural women. So here the stratas were based upon their residence, urban or rural. So they included urban and rural women and an equal number of male and female children, and also they considered the strata based upon their male and female children, and then they understood the mother's expectation for the children's development. So here it is a better type of a design, because here they have tried to understand the expectation based upon the area of residence, urban and rural, and also sometimes expectations might be affected because of the gender of the child. So here they have taken the equal number of the male and female children also, so that they can get a complete picture about the mother's expectation for the children's development. So quota sampling is a good design than the convenient design. Next important type of the non-probability sampling technique is purposive sampling technique. So purposive sampling technique is also known as judgmental sampling, and it is based upon the belief that researchers' knowledge about the population can be used to handpick the sample members. So here researcher uses his own judgment or knowledge that which particular subjects will be better able to give them information, and the researcher can handpick those particular subjects in his sample. So a researcher might decide purposely to select subjects who are judged to be typical of the population or particularly knowledgeable about the issues under the study. So here purposely the researcher selects the subjects whom he feels that they will be the typical of the population for their research study, or who will be knowledgeable about a particular issue or variable for which he is studying. And sampling in this subjective manner, however, provides no external objective method for assessing the typicalness of the selected subjects. However, this is purely subjective feeling of the researcher. There is no objective method of assessing the typicalness of the selected subjects. So if researcher feels that these subjects will be better able to provide him information, then he may include, and it is his own subjective feeling. Then purposive sampling is often used when researchers want a sample of experts. So particularly we use the purposive sampling when we feel that we need some experts who are knowledgeable on a particular issue, who will be better able to give us the information. For example, in Delphi surveys also we include the experts. Now, if we need to evaluate the non-probability sampling, non-probability samples are rarely representative of the population. Here, because we are not selecting the subjects randomly, so that is why always representation of the population is low. So the samples which may select may be over representing some segments or under representing some segments of the population. When every element in the population does not have a chance of being included in the sample, it is likely that some segment of it will be systematically underrepresented. So already I have told you that there is the subjects are not having the same chance of getting selected in the in the sample. So that is why there can be underrepresentation of certain segments. Then quantitative researchers using non-probability samples out of necessity must be cautious about the inferences and conclusions drawn from the data. Now here, because our sample is not representative of the population. So that is why we should always be very cautious whenever we are drawing the conclusion from our data. We cannot straight away say that whatever results we have got doing our study under using the non-probability sampling, that these will be generalizable on our target population. Generalizability, which is known as external validity, that is low whenever we are using the non-probability sampling techniques. So with care in the selection of sample, a conservative interpretation of the results and replication of the study with new samples, researchers may find that non-probability samples work reasonably well. So non-probability sampling techniques can also be really used well if you are having a bigger sample and if you are replicating the study with new samples. So even though you are using non-probability sampling, but if you are doing a study on different samples, new samples, and replication of those studies is done, and then you are getting the same results, then you can conclude it in a better way. Now coming to the another important type of the sampling design, that is probability sampling design. So probability sampling involves the random selection of elements from the population. So here we select the subjects from the population randomly. And random selection should not be confused with the random assignment. When we talked about the experimental research designs, we talked about the random assignment. Now you should be very clear that random assignment is different from the random selection. Random assignment means we assign the subjects to the experimental or control group randomly. So that is the assignment, but the subjects which we select may not be selected randomly there. So you should not confuse random assignment with random selection. So whereas random sampling is it involves a selection process in which each element in the population has an equal independent chance of being selected. So in the random sampling, every element is having equal chance of getting selected. So this is the random sampling. Now the first one sampling design is simple random sampling design. Simple random sampling design is the most basic probability sampling design. And in simple random sampling, the researcher establishes a sampling frame. Now, what is a sampling frame? Sampling frame is a list of all the subjects of the population. For example, if you are conducting a study on nursing students studying in the bachelor nursing students studying in the colleges, then you should have the list of all the nursing students studying in the college. So that will be your sampling frame. The sampling frame is the technical name for the list of elements from which the sample will be chosen. And once a sampling frame has been developed, elements are numbered consecutively. So once your sampling frame is available with you, then all the elements should be numbered, and these should be numbered consecutively. Then a table of random number is used to draw a sample of the desired size. So then we will be using a random number table, and based upon the random number table we will be including the subjects one by one till the time our sample size is complete. It should be clear that sample selected randomly in this fashion is not subject to researcher's bias. Now here, because researcher is not selecting the sample as per his wish, so researcher is not adding any bias. The subjects which are selected in the sample are selected based upon the random numbers. So these are selected randomly. So here this type of the sampling is not subject to the researcher's bias. Although there is no guarantee that a randomly drawn sample will be representative, Random selection does ensure that difference in the attribute of the sample and the population are purely a function of chance. So even though we are selecting the subjects in our sample randomly, we cannot be always 100% sure that our sample will be representative of the population. So while selecting randomly, sometimes some segments might be underrepresented, but still whatever difference in the sample and population is coming, that might be because of chance, not because of the bias which has been introduced by the researcher. The probability of selecting a markedly deviant sample is low. So here, whenever we are selecting the subjects in our sample randomly, deviation of the sample from population is always very low, and this probability decreases as the size of sample increases. So as we increase the sample size, this deviation will again become low. So we should try that whenever we are selecting the sample size should be big enough so that our representation of the population should be better. Then simple random sampling tend to be laborious. Yes, simple random sampling is laborious because here you have to have a sampling frame, and sometimes if your population is very large, sampling frame development is a very difficult task, because you may not be able to get the list of each and every subject of the population. If your population is university students, then it is okay, you can get the list of all the university students easily. But if you are talking about a general population of a village or of a state or of a city, sometimes it is very difficult to get a sampling frame or listing of the subjects of the population. And even though if you get a sampling frame also, still it is time consuming and laborious, because uh, you have to number the elements and then select the sample elements, and it is usually time consuming because you have to have a random number table, and then you are selecting the subjects into your sample. Another important type of the probability sampling is stratified random sampling. So stratified random sampling involves where population is first divided into two or more stratas. I have already talked to you about the stratas. So stratas means you are dividing your population into different segments or groups. So this stratified random sampling is more or less same as quota sampling. So as with quota sampling, the aim of stratified sampling is to enhance the representativeness. So here, because we are selecting the subjects from each group, then our representation of the each segment in our sample will be better. So it helps in enhancing the representativeness. Stratified sampling designs subdivide the population into homogeneous subsets from which an appropriate number of elements are selected at random. So here we divide the population into different groups. These can be the subsets, homogeneous subsets, and then out of these subsets we select the elements randomly. Now the difference between quota sampling and stratified random sampling is that in quota sampling we were selecting the subjects conveniently in each strata, whereas in the stratified random sampling, from each strata the subjects are selected randomly. So that should be very clear to you, and you should not confuse between quota sampling and stratified random sampling. So stratification is often based on such demographic attributes such as age, gender and income level. So always the stratas are based upon certain characteristics, demographic characteristics. It can be age, gender, income level, even education. So you may decide the stratas depending upon your research question. One difficulty is that stratifying attributes must be known in advance and may not be readily discernible. So always whenever you have to divide your subjects into strata, so beforehand you should be having the knowledge about your population characteristics. So if you have the knowledge about the characteristics of your population, then you will be better able to know that which stratas you should be deciding, and representation from each strata, why is it important for your research study. So the most common procedure for drawing a stratified sample is to group together elements belonging to a stratum and then to select randomly the desired number of elements. So here we from each strata we select the subjects randomly. So each strata those are grouped together and then randomly the desired number of elements. For example, if we are having 100 subjects in the sample, then 50 males and 50 females can be selected. Researcher can either select an equal number of elements from each stratum or select unequal numbers. So it depends upon the research question and depends upon your population. So you can select equal number of elements like 50%, 50% if you are having two groups, or if you are having three groups, 33, 33, 33% you can take, or sometimes you can select unequal number depending upon the presence of those groups or segments in your population. So researcher might decide to select subjects in proportion to the size of the stratum in the population using the proportionate stratified sampling. So if you know that in your population typical groups, yeah, for example, if I'm talking about gender, if you know that in your population your gender distribution is 60% females are there and 40% males are there, then in your sample also you may select 60% males, 60% females and 40% males. So this type of stratified random sampling is known as proportionate stratified sampling. And when disproportionate sampling is used, however, it is necessary to make an adjustment to the data to arrive at the best estimate of overall population values. So if you are using the disproportionate sampling, then you may use some statistical procedures where we do the adjustment, which is known as weighing, and based upon the weighing then we conclude our results. Then we may inform that in the population the representation of this particular segment was like this, and in our sample it was like this, and this adjustment has been made, and because of that the conclusions are made based upon the adjustment or weighing of a particular segment in the population. Stratified random sampling enables researcher to sharpen the precision and representativeness of the final sample. So always the stratified, where we are making the stratas, it increases the precision and it increases the representation, because here we are selecting the subjects from each strata. Here if we are using simple random sampling, some stratas or some segments might be underrepresented or overrepresented, which can be reduced here through the stratified random sampling technique. When it is desirable to obtain reliable information about subpopulations whose memberships are relatively small, stratification provides a means of including a sufficient number of cases in the sample by oversampling for that stratum. So whenever we are having good information or reliable information about the subpopulation, where we know that in our population the representation is low, then through the stratification we can try to include sufficient number of the cases so that that particular strata should also be included in our sample, so that that particular strata can also be present in the sufficient number in our sample. Then stratified sampling, however, may be impossible if information on the critical variables is unavailable. So stratified sampling, sometime it is impossible if we do not have much information about the critical variables which are present in our population. So if we do not have much information about the characteristics of the population, then stratified sampling is usually difficult to use. Furthermore, a stratified sample requires even more labor and effort than simple random sampling because samples must be drawn for multiple enumerated listings. Now here in stratified sampling design, your stratas might be 2, 3 or 4. So it means you will have to have 4, 3 or 2 sampling frames, and based upon your sampling frames from each set of the list or each set of the sampling frame, you will be selecting the subjects. So here your labor or your work increases, whereas in simple random sampling you have only one sampling frame, and out of that sampling frame you select the subjects. So it is even more laborious than the simple random sampling technique. Next important type of probability sampling is cluster sampling. So in cluster sampling, there is successive random sampling of units. The first unit is the large grouping or cluster. So here we divide the population into the clusters, and successive random sampling of those clusters is done. So, for example, if we are drawing a sample of nursing students, we might first draw a random sample of nursing schools and then draw a sample of students of the selected school. So, it might be difficult if you need to get the nursing students from a state. There might be number of nursing students and nursing schools in a state. So then what you can do is you can make one cluster of nursing schools and the next cluster of nursing students. So at first level you will be selecting the nursing schools randomly out of the sampling frame of nursing schools, and then the nursing schools which have been selected, then you will be making the list of students who are studying in those nursing schools, and then randomly from each nursing school you will be selecting the students. So this becomes easy when you are having a very big population and who is widely distributed in a bigger geographical area. So the usual process for selecting the sample from the general population is to sample successively, such as administrative units, estates, cities, census tracts, and then households. So means if you are selecting a subject, selecting the subjects from a general population, then it is better that you divide the clusters as first cluster can be the state, then second can be the cities, and third can be the towns, and the fourth can be the households. So with this way you will be able to get the subjects from the different areas, but then your work or your labor can be decreased. Because of the successive stages in the cluster sampling, this approach is often called multi-stage sampling, because here at every stage you are randomly selecting out of the cluster. So that is why this is known as the multi-stage, and depending upon the stage it can be described in terms of the number of the stage. So it can be one stage cluster sampling, two stage cluster sampling, or three stage cluster sampling, depending upon how many clusters were made for selecting the sample. The clusters can be selected either by simple or stratified sampling. Now the clusters can be randomly selected through simple random sampling, or maybe stratas can also be made. For example, if we are talking about the nursing schools, we can make the stratas rural schools and urban. So then you may get the nursing schools from rural area, and you may select from the urban areas also. So you can use either simple random sampling or stratified random sampling. For a specified number of cases, cluster sampling tend to be less accurate than the simple or stratified random sampling. This is there that cluster sampling is less accurate because here at every stage you are selecting the elements randomly. So the other elements you are missing. So large number of subjects you will be missing in your sample. So that is why it is not that accurate as simple and the stratified random sampling. Despite this advantage, cluster sampling is more economical. and practical. Then other types of the probability sampling, particularly when the population is large and widely spread. So although this disadvantage is there, but cluster sampling is very good type of sampling because it is economical and practical, particularly when your population is very large and it is widely dispersed in a bigger geographical area. Next important type of a probability sampling is systematic sampling. So systematic sampling involves the selection of every kth case from a list or group. Systematic sampling involves that if you are having a sampling frame or list of the subjects with you, then every kth case you can select for your sample. And systematic sampling is sometimes used to sample every kth person entering a bookstore or passing down the street or leaving a hospital. So sometimes every kth person can be selected in the sample. For example, if anybody is leaving the hospital or anybody is passing down the street or anybody is entering the OPD, but then this type of sampling is a non-probability type of sampling. So in such situation, unless the population is narrowly defined as all those people entering, passing by or leaving, the sampling is non-probability. But for probability type of the systematic sampling, if we had a list or a sampling frame, then following procedure can be adopted, because we know the desired sample size, which is given as small n, and the size of the population must be known or estimated, which is given as capital N. So by dividing n by n, capital N by small n, the sampling interval can be established. So for example, if our population is having 10,000 persons and in our sample we need to include 500 subjects, then our k will be 20. So every 20th person in the list we will be including in our sample. So systematic sampling conducted in this manner yields essentially the same results as simple random sampling, but involves far less work. Systematic sampling, although it is easy and it involves less work, but it gives us the same results as the simple random sampling, so it can be used. Systematic sampling is preferred to simple random sampling because the same results are obtained in a more efficient manner. And systematic sampling can also be applied to lists that have been stratified. So even if we are having the stratified type of the sampling frames, like for example we are having 2 or 3 sampling frames depending upon the strata, then out of each sampling frame we can select the subjects through the systematic sampling. But if it is stratified, then it is better if we are having a bigger population even in the stratas. So then it will be better to go for the sampling, systematic sampling. But if you are having small number of subjects in the in your stratified sampling frames, then it is better to go for the simple random sampling. Now let us discuss about the evaluation of the probability sampling. Probability sampling is the only viable method of obtaining the representative sample. So probability sampling is a very good type of a sampling design where the representation of the population is very good. So it is the only viable method through which we can obtain the representative sample. And if all the elements in the population have an equal probability of being selected, then the resulting sample is likely to do a good job of representing the population. So as I have already told you that here, because we use the random sampling technique, so each and every element is having equal probability of being selected in the sample. So that results in better representation of the population. A further advantage is that probability sampling allows researchers to estimate the magnitude of the sampling error. When we are using the probability sampling, then we can calculate the sampling error, means based upon the samples values we can calculate the sampling error, and we can calculate the values for the population. So sampling error refers to the difference between population values such as average age of the population and sample values such as the average age of the sample. So based upon the sample's value, we can calculate the sampling error. The great drawback of probability sampling are its inconvenience and complexity. The main important drawback is that it is inconvenient to conduct, and even it is complex. It is complex because here you need to have a sampling frame of the population, where you have to have the list of all the subjects in the population, which is sometimes difficult to get. And when you get the sampling frame, then again there are complex procedures involved to select the sample. Then it is usually beyond the scope of most researchers to sample using a probability design. So usually if population is very large, then it is difficult for researchers to go for the probability sampling, but if it is narrow, then usually they can go for the probability sampling. Probability sampling is the preferred and most respected method of obtaining sample elements, but it may in some cases be impractical. Sometimes it is not practically possible to use the probability sampling for a research study. For example, if you are doing a study on the hospital patients, now you have to have a sampling frame of all the hospital patients admitted with a certain disease. But what happens in the hospital, the patient, every day the new patients are admitted, and every day the patients are discharged also. So even though if you make a list also, one day that list might be all right, but next day new patients might be added into that sampling frame. So then it becomes difficult for you to go for the probability sampling. So with this, the sampling designs and sampling techniques is over. Let us summarize the lecture. So sampling is the process of selecting a portion of the population, which is an entire aggregate of the cases. And an element is the basic unit. So element may or may not be only humans, it may be any other element such as hospitals or nursing schools or villages also. Then the criteria that specify the population characteristics are the eligibility criteria. So we always set the eligibility criteria for the selection of the subjects into our sample, where we describe clearly about the inclusion and the exclusion criteria. And the main consideration in assessing a sample in quantitative study is its representativeness. So we should be always clear that whenever we are selecting the sample from a population, the characteristics of the sample should be as per the population's characteristics, so that it should be representing the population in a better way, and there should not be bias involved. Sampling bias refers to the systematic over-representation or under-representation of some segment of the population. So we talked about sampling bias, where when you have selected the sample, in your sample certain segments can be either over-represented or under-represented. The non-probability sampling techniques are convenient sampling, purposive sampling, and quota sampling. Non-probability sampling design are convenient and economical, but important disadvantage is potential for the bias, and this bias can be added while sampling, or it can be added by the researcher. Probability sampling designs which involve the random selection of elements from the population yield more representative samples than the non-probability designs and permit estimates of the magnitude of the sampling error. So probability design includes the random selection of the elements. So each and every element is having equal and independent chance of getting selected in the sample. Probability sampling techniques are simple random sampling, stratified random sampling, and systematic random sampling, and cluster sampling. And cluster sampling is also known as multi-stage sampling. So with this, the lecture on sampling design is over. I hope you have understood all the concepts of the sampling techniques. Thank you. Have a nice day.